Remember Dana Abuqamar, a Palestinian student with dual citizenship of Canada and Jordan, who was studying in Manchester in the UK and had her student visa cancelled by the previous Rishi Sunak government because of her comments on Palestinians' right to resist? Well, more than a year later, Dana has won her prolonged legal battle in a British court of law. A UK court has finally reversed the British government's decision to cancel her visa. The previous British government, which had people like Suella Braverman and James Cleverly as their home secretaries, had moved swiftly to cancel Dana's visa because of her comments at a Manchester rally in the immediate aftermath of the 7th of October attacks.
They are full with pride. This is the first time that something like this happens in modern day history. For 16 years, Gaza has been under blockade, and for the first time, they are actively resisting. They are not on the defense, and this is truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And we are both in fear, but also in fear of how Israel will retaliate and how we've seen it retaliate overnight, and the missiles that it's launched and the attacks. But also, we are full of pride. We're really, really full of joy of what has happened.
The Home Office has said at that time that it was revoking Dana's visa on national security grounds after claiming she was a risk to public safety. Yes, a student coming here to study and taking part in a peaceful protest because her country is being bombed and her relatives are being butchered. It was a crime for this government, the backer of Israeli genocide. Just so everyone knows, Dana had lost 15 relatives. 15 relatives in Gaza since Israel began its genocidal campaign on 7th of October. She had lost 15 relatives within days of Israeli genocidal campaign. But she had no right to take part in a peaceful protest. After the Home Office revoked her student visa, this is what Dana had told Middle East Eye about her disappointment on the violation of human rights.
I'm Dana Abuqamar, a Palestinian law student at the University of Manchester, and the Home Office decided to cancel my student visa after I spoke up at a pro-Palestine protest. I came here to the UK to receive an education, and as a resident, I thought that I would receive equal rights here in the UK in terms of my human rights to freely express myself and stand in solidarity with those who are oppressed in Gaza and beyond. But it came to me as a shocking realization that no, there is systemic discrimination here in the UK, and this country that takes pride in itself for being a beacon of human rights, for being a beacon of democracy, does not act in that manner towards ethnic minorities and towards people of color like myself. So it was very shocking to me, and I was completely distraught to receive such a decision. The last 7 months were very difficult for me and my family, not only because we have family in Gaza, 15 of whom I've lost. They were murdered in an Israeli airstrike that targeted their residential building in Gaza City, but also the fact that I'm going through this very difficult experience where my voice is being suppressed and I'm being censored for simply standing in solidarity with my people who are being genocided currently in Gaza. So it's been extremely difficult on both ends, really.
As expected, Dana challenged the Home Office decision, and an appeal court in Manchester has finally ruled that the Palestinian student had her visa wrongfully revoked by the UK Home Office. Yes, Judge Melanie Plimmer, whose photo you can see on the screen here, said in a remarkable order that the Home Office had violated Dana Abuqamar's human rights and her ability to practice freedom of speech by revoking her student visa. The judge also emphasized that Dana Abuqamar is not an extremist and added that she had no clear knowledge of the role of Hamas at that stage and certainly had no intention of conveying support for Hamas or the terrorist atrocities against civilians committed in the 7th of October attack. The judge said, and I quote, "There is a clearly recognized and fundamental distinction between supporting the Palestinian cause and supporting Hamas and their actions. Nowhere does the appellant express support for Hamas specifically or their actions." End of quote. Reacting to her legal victory, Dana Abuqamar has said that justice has finally prevailed and she was happy with the result. Her statement read, and I quote, "This case has reinforced Palestinians' right to resist occupation in the domestic context, that the expression in support of that right cannot be conflated with support for terrorism, that there is no room for abuse of power by ministers and arbitrary decision-making to undermine the rule of law." End of quote. Now, Dana Abuqamar's case is a shining example how the rogue politicians in the Western countries have silenced the victims of Israel's genocidal campaign. They have been quite happy and comfortable in sponsoring the genocidal campaign of Israel. They have been quite happy to remain a mute spectator when more than 43,000 people have been brutally murdered, 70% of them being children and women. And that's a conservative figure. Unofficially, that number could easily surpass 200,000. So we are talking about 10% of Gaza's population being brutally murdered, slaughtered by barbaric regime of Israel. And the Western country has been, in fact, the rogue politicians from the Western world, they have been more than happy in being the willful participant. To hell with their so-called civilized world and the claim on being the civilized world. They have been following the toolkit. What is that toolkit? So they first helped Israel with lethal weapons to slaughter innocent Palestinian men, women, children, and babies. They then ordered their propaganda media outlets, such as the BBCs of the world, CNNs of the world, Guardians and New York Times and Washington Posts of the world, and others to hide Israeli war crimes and paint Palestinian victims as villains by portraying them as terrorists. And when relatives of those being butchered by Israeli terrorists managed to stage peaceful protest, Home Office run by the same rogue politicians brand them terrorists and terrorist sympathizers, and then will revoke their visa. Thank God there are judges like Melanie Plimmer who still believes in the rule of law and have the spine to go against the nefarious design of these rogue and corrupt politicians. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and its journalism on buymecoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider being a part of it. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.